welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. As we do every hour with introductions, he's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright, and good morning.
Man, what a few weeks to be a Philadelphian.
Oh, yeah.
Basketball team on a hot streak, win a Super Bowl, and go ahead and peel another national championship. Does Jay Wright.
Get in the playoffs.
Man.
But is anyone smoother about it than Jay Wright?
No.
He just walks the walk. He's having a good time. Life is good.
He was pretty good. Everything except that tie bar on the suit thing.
I knew
You had
it was
such a hard time with that.
Can I ask you a personal question?
I'm afraid, but okay.
Do you have just the slightest crush on Jay Wright?
Oh, there's no doubt.
Okay.
It's there.
It's more than the slightest.
Yeah, I have a crush on two people, Danny Ainge and Jay Wright. I've been very open about that.
One of those totally understandable. The other one, man.
Okay, well, let's not say which one is which. Let's just get into it. I love Jay. He was always great with me when I was in Philadelphia.
Absolutely. So. He's been great to the show.
All right, speaking of the big marquee game last night, so 2 months ago, the aforementioned Jay Wright came on this show. He laughed, he smiled, he talked about the joy of college basketball, and I thought to myself, no way this guy's going to win another title. He's too nice. Well, Jay Wright won a title last night, another one. Villanova capping off their dominant tournament performance with a 79-62 win over Michigan, led by 31 points out of the guy of the night, DiVincenzo, off the bench. Wildcats win their second national title in 3 years, beating Michigan. All right, let's start the conversation with you, Chris Carter. How are the Wildcats able to be so dominant, not only the entire season, but then, of course, in the biggest game of the tournament?
Well, for people who didn't watch the regular season that close, they might not understand why Villanova was there. 14 of the weeks during the season, they were the #1 ranked team, but they had a couple injuries during the season that it only made the team stronger once they got into the tournament. So not only are they one of the best teams, we know with Coach Wright they're one of the best coach teams, but with these injuries during the season, it allowed them to put minutes on other players that ultimately would be the key to them winning the third title in school history. Their ability to understand what they were doing offensively, because they are a three-point shooting team, and even when the three-point shots weren't going, they stuck with their system. They start going to more isolation, taking guys off the dribble, which we hadn't seen them do a whole bunch, not the whole lineup. But Jay Wright, they were able to change the game plan during the game, but when they weren't hitting the three-point shots, go to more isolation to get the offense going. And then ultimately, I mean, this is the best team in college basketball because of their overall depth. We saw they have the super sub, Dante, come off the bench.
Man.
And when you have that type of productivity, they're going to be hard to beat in college basketball. Also, it's refreshing. They have a star freshman. They have a star sophomore, star junior, and we know the senior class, like they've been winners since they've been there. So this is the combination that I believe is lethal in college basketball and supersedes the one-and-dones with all the attention on all the freshmen. A program like Villanova that has those stars at every level. And I mean, this is not going to stop. When you can build a program like Jay's done, you can be competitive every year.
And I want to talk about the program and what this means for Nova historically in a moment. We alluded to yesterday what rarefied air they would go into with a third championship, what rarefied air Jay Wright as a coach would go into with a second championship. Before we do that, you mentioned the star sub, Dante DiVincenzo. Like, this guy is a sub in name only, right? He comes off the bench, but he was their 4th leading scorer during the year. He plays starters minutes. And what we saw from him in the first half reminded me of Jerry McNamara at Syracuse, Carmelo's year, 18 points in the first half, 6 3-pointers against Kansas. What Jerry McNamara, Syracuse ended up winning that title, but Jerry McNamara got then shut down in the second half. DiVincenzo won them this basketball game, in my eyes, with his 9 consecutive points in the second half.
Also, to start the second half, he didn't start, but 52 seconds in,
he was back in there.
I mean, Jay put him right in.
And that was a great call by Jay.
Jay Wright wasn't going to totally adjust, wasn't going to change what they'd been doing all year long. They got to the national championship starting these 5, starting the second half with these 5, the same as their game starters, but he knew who his hot hand was. This was a game that was playing exactly the way Michigan wanted it to. With 5.5, 6 minutes left in the first half, Michigan's up 21-16. And then to close the first half, it was a 21-7 run by Villanova. That was part of a larger run that was 35-12. And I tweeted at halftime, it felt like the game got away from Michigan those last 5 minutes. Like, they had played so well for the first 15. To go into halftime down nearly double digits was going to be so difficult for them to overcome. And DiVincenzo was spectacular. Now, this is a team that's got two definite pros on it. DiVincenzo might be a pro. It's got a lottery pick on it, Mikal Bridges. But he was the guy last night that led them to victory. 30 points in a national championship game is a tremendous feat.
And here's what's so great about him, too, is that the other players rallied around him, right? They even said, hey, we knew he had the hot hand. We didn't need to be the star. We've been the star. It was great to see him come off the bench, and it was nice to know, like, what a great team concept they have. But this wasn't just the final game that this Nova team dominated. I mean, they covered the spread every game. They were so dominant throughout the entire tournament. How were they able to do that, CC?
Man, they're really talented. I mean, they can score the basketball. Let's not forget, during the regular season, NCAA at leading 83 points a game, and to be able to play that type of pace, that was going to be a problem for Michigan. Big Ten plays a great brand of basketball, but their inability to build score in the upper 70s or 80 points, as we can see, the numbers would indicate if it was going to be a game that was going to have that type of pace, Michigan was going to have a hard time being able to defeat Villanova. Also, Michigan forgot Mo Wagner. They forgot to throw the ball, and he had the mismatch of the game. As you can see, when they started the game, the second half or the first half, they did not go back into the paint. When they did a lot of pick and roll, and they would get the mismatch with him on a smaller player. And they forgot to go to him, keep going to him. He was getting fouls. He was getting easy shots. I believe Villanova was afraid. That was the only offensive player from Michigan that they were afraid of. So when they went away from that, that also led to Villanova getting this win.
When we went to the first commercial break, Wagner had 7 points. At the under 16, he's got 7 points. He then finishes with 16, and there were a lot of mismatches. There were a lot of times you had a small guard on him, and they were not getting him the basketball. To your point about them embracing DiVincenzo's game, he needed to have this game because Jalen Brunson, the National Player of the Year, the best player in college basketball according to all the awards this year, was in foul trouble and was not on from the field. It was Mikal Bridges and DiVincenzo that led him to the victory. To your point, though, about the dominant performance, now this is only the second team since the field has expanded to 64 teams that has won every game by at least a dozen points. Their average margin of victory was nearly 18 points. That's
outstanding.
And by the way, so for example, the team that had a better average margin of victory en route to a national championship was the Villanova team 2 years ago. And you might say, how could that be? They won a game, they won the national championship on a buzzer beater. That was a close game. Their Elite Eight game was a close game. That's because they had a couple 30 and 40-point wins mixed in there. Villanova was just beating everybody by 12 to 25 points. Like every game in this tournament, they were just so clearly the best team out there. And unlike Michigan, it's not taking anything away from Michigan, who had a fortuitous turn in the bracket. Until the national championship game, they hadn't played a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 seed. Villanova played about the toughest bracket you could play. It played true to seed. They played a 3 instead of a 2, but they didn't have any Cinderellas in their path. They were beating, after the first game against Radford, some of the best teams in college basketball, and they were winning these games by halftime.
So now Villanova they've won 2 out of the last 3. What does this mean? Where do they sit big picture? Where does that fall for you?
Trying to build the program. I mean, continue. They might lose. They're going to definitely lose 1 guy. They could lose as many as 3 guys. If the freshman Spellman decides to go into the draft, you have to replace him. I'm not going to put them in the category as far as what do they do next, or they for next year's, because there's too many moving parts. There's too many freshmen coming in that we don't know about. But Jay Wright's team will be very, very good. They will be the favorite in the Big East again. We look at Xavier, who they had problems with during the regular season, right?
Yep.
They lose their coach.
They beat Xavier twice in the regular season, but Xavier ended their streak of consecutive conference championships.
Yes. Now, Xavier, they're losing their coach, Chris Mack, to Louisville.
Yep.
So what will they do from there? But they are the preeminent team, especially on the East Coast. Like, I think they have a transfer coming over is going to help them. They can play. They got they got a top 15 freshman coming in, a 5-star recruit that's going to help them. But it really hinges on, does Brunson decide to come back? for his 4th year. And does Spellman, the freshman, does he decide to go to the NBA? I think he should come back. That's where Villanova is going forward.
And I would have, DiVincenzo will come back. Like, I understand people are so, I mean, I think he might end up being an NBA player, but he will come back. He's not a leave early type of player. I'd be very surprised if Mikal Bridges go be a pro, go make money, go be a top 15 pick. There's no question about it. But as far as what this means for the program to me, you got to keep in mind who you're recruiting. Everyone you're recruiting at this point in college basketball is born in the year 2000 or later, right? That's how young these guys are. Since the year 2000 to now, only Duke, Carolina, and UConn have won more championships in these players' lifetimes. I'm not even including, obviously, their first one in '85. From 2000 to now, only Duke, Carolina, and UConn have a better winning history for when these players were alive to watch college basketball. Like, Villanova has won as many championships in the last 3 years as Kansas, one of the true blue bloods, has won in the last 60 years. They've won as many championships they've won more championships in the last 2 years in the last 3 years than UCLA has won in the last 30 years. Like, so the blue blood thing can kind of be fluid. And if you're a young recruit and you say, I want to play for a cool program, I want to play in a cool city, and I want to play for a program that has a winning history.
And a good coach.
And a great coach. A great coach.
That out there.
That is, Villanova now is all of a sudden near, if not at the top of that list.
Right. They end up getting one of the recruits that left Arizona with Arizona involved in the shoe scandal.
Right.
He's decided to come to Villanova. So the kids out there, their eyes are on Villanova as a viable option, one of the top programs.
We have Jason Capel coming on a little bit later. We'll talk more about this game. All right, coming up, could the Patriots really be moving on from Rob Gronkowski? Talk about that next on First Things First.